DeSantis. I do all of Live's user documentation, so the manual, the in-software lessons, and all of the texts basically that appear in the application. And lately I've also been managing our Twitter and Facebook accounts, so if you see posts on Twitter or Facebook, I'm generally the guy that writes them.
What sort of things are you discussing?
I mean, a lot of it is, you know, as is the nature of social media, a lot of it is finding interesting tutorial content or, you know, devices that people have made and simply reposting them in a way that more people will see. So a lot of it is looking around the internet and finding interesting things that people are doing with our software in conjunction with other tools maybe. Also announcing workshops or user groups that we're doing anywhere where they might be in the world.
So where's the biggest amount of activity for Ableton? Where does it come from?
City-wise, it's Berlin and New York, which makes it likely. Maybe it's lucky then that we have our offices there. But you know, I don't do a lot of the statistics tracking. I'm not really a data crunching guy. I'm mostly a content writer. But the little bit that I know, it seems that most of the activity is from Berlin and New York.
And in terms of what you do for your own music, how do you use Live?
I used to use Live just as a live tool and did producing in other applications, but over the last 5 years or so, I've really started using Live as everything. It's my go-to DAW, sound design environment, and live performance space.
What's your favorite instrument?
In the Ableton suite?
Yeah.
Probably Operator. Especially after all of the enhancements that we did with Live 8, it's really become a kind of go-to workhorse synth, far beyond just FM now. The new filter types make it pretty amazing even for virtual analog stuff.
So take us through the process of creating a manual for a product like this. You talk to the engineers, they come up with a new product, and then you have to write about it and make it user-friendly. How do you do that?
Well, I try to be involved pretty early on in how a new feature works, which sometimes just means annoying the specification and development teams because I don't like the way something's working from a user's perspective. But once we've settled on a direction, my job is to kind of translate how the thing works technically into how it should work musically. So basically take a kind of technical concept like a new instrument and figure out what the use cases are for it. You know, how is it that a user will interface with this thing? Because they don't care about the sort of the details of the interaction of the various buttons. They care about how to use it to make a finished product. So my job, I guess, is to translate this kind of technical thinking into user thinking.
Do you run the manual by users before you publish it to see what they think about it?
I run it by in-house users, and we try to get some version of the manual available in early beta versions when we're heading up towards a major release. In between release times, a lot of what I do is just kind of bug fixing, the same that we would do with the software itself. You know, finding things that could be improved in the documentation, or sometimes literally fixing grammar, punctuation, or spelling errors.
Does it start in English or does it start in German?
It starts in English. The English was even the source language for documentation when it was written primarily by Gerhard, and then everything is translated into a bunch of other languages.
So tell me about what it's like to do sound design for some of the instruments.
It's something I do kind of on the side of my documentation work, but I did some of the preset design for the Suite 8 library, and one project that I worked on quite a bit was a pack of operator-based drum racks called designer drums, which is now folded into the Suite 8 library. So that was a set of drum kits basically that were made using nothing but operator and effects. So that was a lot of fun. I mean, I really enjoy synthesis-based drums because you have so much more flexibility over the timbre over time than you would with samples, for example.
Now, do you start with a sound in mind and you try and create it, or do you improvise and you find something and then you hang on to it? How does that work?
It's some of that all, as well as sometimes trying to duplicate a sound that I've already heard. You know, I'll often try to, using synthesis, emulate or get close to some kind of sampled sound. Sometimes it's completely improvisatory. I'll just start turning knobs until I zero in on something that I think is interesting.
How do people name the instruments? That must be one of the fun parts of it, or one of the worst parts of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think every sound designer has their own philosophy about naming. I try to make the names descriptive and entertaining. the idea is that if you're looking at a huge flat list of sounds, you want to know something about what you're going to get when you load it. So I try to make the names as referential as possible so that you at least are going to have a sense of what you're going to get.